Poor 7-year-old twins face humiliation at elite private school. But when teachers try to embarrass them, they shock everyone with incredible genius. Before we dive in, let's light up this comment section with hearts from every corner of the world. The September morning air carried the scent of fresh possibilities as 7-year-old Emma Wilson adjusted the straps of her second-hand backpack for the third time. Beside her, her identical twin sister Olivia clutched a worn notebook against her chest, her wide eyes taking in every detail of the imposing brick facade before them. Westbrook Academy stood like a fortress of privilege, its manicured lawns and gleaming windows speaking of generations of wealth and tradition. The brass nameplate by the entrance caught the morning sun, casting golden letters that seemed to whisper of exclusivity. "Remember what we talked about, girls?" "Their father, Jack," Wilson said softly, kneeling between his daughters. His custodial uniform from the night shift at General Hospital was hidden beneath his only good jacket, the one he wore to parent-teacher conferences and church. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." Emma straightened her shoulders, her chin lifting with quiet defiance. "We know, Dad. We earned this." Olivia nodded silently, but her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the corner of a photograph tucked inside her notebook. Their mother, Catherine, captured in a moment of joy 5 years ago, before cancer stole her brilliant mind from the world. The scholarship letter had arrived 3 months earlier, announcing that the Wilson twins had been selected for Westbrook Academy's new diversity initiative. Their public school teacher, Mrs. Henderson, had recommended them after witnessing their extraordinary mathematical abilities during a routine assessment that left even her speechless. As they approached the main entrance, the heavy oak doors opened to reveal Principal Richard Montgomery. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit impeccable, and his smile carefully measured, warm enough to appear welcoming, but cool enough to maintain distance. "Ah, the Wilson family," he announced, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. "Welcome to Westbrook Academy." Jack shook the principal's extended hand. "Thank you for this opportunity, sir. The girls are excited to begin." Principal Montgomery's gaze swept over the twins, lingering on their department store uniforms and worn shoes. "Yes, well, our board insisted on expanding our diversity. These scholarship cases often bring such interesting perspectives." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, Olivia's small hand found hers, squeezing gently. They had learned long ago to be each other's anchor in moments like these. "Let me show you to your classroom," Principal Montgomery continued, already turning toward the hallway. "Dr. Hayes is our most distinguished mathematics teacher. Princeton undergraduate, Harvard graduate degree. She's somewhat particular about academic standards." As they walked through corridors lined with portraits of distinguished alumni, Emma noticed the way other students' conversations hushed when they passed. Designer backpacks and the latest gadgets filled every corner, a stark contrast to their simple supplies. "This is where we part ways, Mr. Wilson," Principal Montgomery announced outside a classroom door marked Advanced Mathematics. "Dr. E. Hayes, the girls will find their way just fine, won't you, girls?" It wasn't really a question. Jack knelt once more, kissing each daughter's forehead. "I'll be here at 3:30 sharp," he whispered. "Make your mother proud." As their father's footsteps faded down the hallway, Emma and Olivia stood before the classroom door. Through the glass panel, they could see students already seated, their posture perfect, their attention focused on an elegant woman writing equations on the board with swift, precise movements. Dr. Eleanor Hayes turned as they entered, her sharp blue eyes immediately assessing the newcomers. Her graying hair was pulled back in a flawless chignon, and her reputation for academic excellence preceded her like an invisible shield. "Class," she announced without warmth, "we have 2 new students joining us today, the Wilson twins. They're here on special arrangement." The emphasis on those last words hung in the air like a challenge, and Emma felt something fierce awaken in her chest, the same determination that had once driven their mother to solve impossible equations late into the night. "Take your seats," Dr. Hayes instructed, gesturing toward two empty desks in the back row. "We're in the middle of our unit on complex fractions." As Emma and Olivia settled into their seats, whispers rippled through the classroom. But what their new classmates didn't know, what Dr. Hayes couldn't yet imagine, was that these two 7-year-old girls carried within them a mathematical gift that would soon turn Westbrook Academy upside down. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the equations on the board, and Emma smiled slightly as she recognized patterns that others might miss. The real education was about to begin. Dr. Eleanor Hayes surveyed her classroom with the calculated precision of a general inspecting troops. 23 years of teaching mathematics at Westbrook Academy had refined her methods to an art form, and her walls displayed the proof: certificates from Princeton and Harvard, photographs with Nobel laureates, and shelves lined with academic journals bearing her published research. Her reputation was built on producing elementary mathematics champions, students who consistently dominated regional competitions and secured early admission to the nation's most prestigious preparatory schools. Every calculation in her life had been deliberate, every academic decision strategic. She remembered the heated faculty meeting just 2 months ago when Principal Montgomery announced the scholarship program. "Test scores can be misleading," she had argued, her voice cutting through the conference room like a blade. "These children lack the cultural foundation our curriculum builds upon. We're setting them up for failure." But the board had insisted, and now here they sat, the Wilson twins with their discount store uniforms and secondhand supplies, disrupting the carefully cultivated environment she had spent decades perfecting. "Today we'll continue with complex fractions," Dr. Hayes announced, turning to write an intricate problem on the board. The chalk moved with mechanical precision: 7, 8, 3, 4, plus 1 to 6, x 2 to 3. The familiar rustle of expensive notebooks opening filled the air as students prepared to work. Dr. Hayes allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. This problem typically challenged even her most advanced pupils. "Miss Emma Wilson," she called suddenly, her voice sharp as winter air. "Since you're new to our standards, perhaps you'd like to solve this at the board?" A hush fell over the classroom. Emma felt 22 pairs of eyes boring into her as she stood, her chair scraping against the polished floor. Olivia shot her an encouraging look, but Emma could see the worry flickering in her sister's eyes. Walking to the board felt like crossing a battlefield. Emma took the chalk with steady hands, feeling its familiar weight. Her mother had once told her that mathematics was like music. Once you heard the rhythm, the melody would follow. She began writing, her small hand moving with surprising confidence. First, she tackled the addition in parentheses, finding the common denominator. 3, 4 plus 1, 6 equals 9, 12 plus 2, 12 equals 11, 12. Dr. Hayes's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained skeptical. Emma continued, converting the division to multiplication. 7, 8, 11, 12 becomes 7, 8 x 12, 11. She multiplied across 84, 88, which reduces to 21, 22. Then came the final multiplication. 21, 22, x 2, 3 equals 42, 66, which simplifies to 7, 11. But Emma didn't stop there. She turned to face the class, her voice growing stronger with each word. "The key is remembering that division by a fraction is the same as multiplication by its reciprocal. And when you have mixed operations, always work inside parentheses first, just like in regular arithmetic." Several students nodded in understanding, their faces lighting up with comprehension. Tommy Martinez, who had struggled with fractions all semester, whispered, "Oh, now I get it." Dr. Hayes stared at the board, then at Emma, then back at the board. The solution was not only correct but elegantly presented. More disturbing still was the way Emma had explained it, making complex concepts accessible to her struggling classmates. "Adequate," Dr. Hayes said finally, her tone carefully neutral. "Though I suspect you've encountered this specific problem type before, memorization can be effective for certain patterns." Emma's cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice respectful. "Actually, Dr. Hayes, I've never seen this exact problem, but my mom taught me that once you understand the rules, you can apply them to any combination." The mention of her mother sent a brief pang through Emma's chest. but she held her ground. Behind her, Olivia sat straighter, pride radiating from her small frame. Dr. Hayes's lips pressed into a thin line. In her experience, 7-year-olds didn't demonstrate this level of mathematical reasoning without extensive coaching. Someone had clearly prepared these children specifically for situations like this. "Return to your seat, Miss Wilson," she instructed, coolly. "Class, let's try something more challenging." As Emma walked back to her desk, she caught whispered conversations. "Did you see how she explained it? That was actually helpful. Maybe she could tutor me sometime." Dr. Hayes turned back to the board, her mind racing. One problem proved nothing. But if these scholarship students thought they could waltz into her classroom and impress everyone with rehearsed performances, they were gravely mistaken. She would find their limitations. She would expose the gaps in their preparation. Because, in her 23 years at Westbrook Academy, Dr. Eleanor Hayes had never encountered a problem she couldn't solve. And that included the problem of students who didn't belong. Tomorrow, she decided, watching Emma whisper encouragingly to her sister, she would present them with challenges no amount of coaching could have prepared them for. The real test was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since the Wilson twins first entered Dr. Hayes's classroom, and an uneasy rhythm had developed. Each day brought new challenges, subtle tests designed to reveal weaknesses that Dr. Hayes remained convinced must exist. This particular Tuesday morning found Dr. Hayes at the board, chalk dancing across the surface as she demonstrated mathematical patterns to her captivated audience. Her confidence was absolute. After all, pattern recognition was her specialty, published in 3 academic journals. "Observe this sequence," she announced, writing with flourish. 2, 6, 18, 54, 162, 484. Can anyone identify the pattern governing this progression? Her eyes swept the room, deliberately avoiding the back corner where the twins sat. Hands shot up around the classroom. "Each number is multiplied by 3, called out Sarah Chen, a 4th grader known for her quick thinking. "Precisely, Dr. Hayes smiled, her satisfaction evident. "Each term is the previous term multiplied by 3. Simple geometric progression." Emma frowned slightly, her pencil moving across her notebook. She traced through the sequence again. 2x3, 6, 6, x3, 18, 18, x3, 54, 54, x3, 162. But then 162 x3 should equal 486, not 484. She glanced at Olivia, who had noticed the same discrepancy and was pointing subtly at her own calculations. Emma remembered her father's gentle words from just last week. "Sometimes it's not what you say, sweetheart, but how you say it that makes all the difference." Slowly, Emma raised her hand. Dr. Hayes paused mid-explanation, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Yes, Miss Wilson?" "I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Hayes," Emma began, her voice carefully respectful, "but I'm a little confused about the pattern. If each number is 3 times the previous one, shouldn't the 6th term be 486 instead of 484? The classroom fell deadly silent. 22 students turned to look between Emma and the board, then back at their formidable teacher. The wall clock's ticking seemed thunderously loud. Dr. Hayes stared at the sequence she had written, her confident posture wavering slightly. Her mind raced through the multiplication, 162x3. The answer struck her like cold water. The girl was right. For a moment, that stretched like eternity, Dr. Hayes stood frozen. Her reputation, her authority, her carefully constructed classroom dynamic, all balanced on the edge of this simple arithmetic error. But Dr. Eleanor Hayes had not built her career by admitting mistakes to 7-year-olds. "Excellent observation. Miss Wilson," she said finally, her voice regaining its authoritative tone as she erased the 484 and replaced it with 486. "I was testing your attention to detail. Too many students accept information without verification." She turned back to the class with renewed vigor. "This is precisely why critical thinking matters more than passive absorption." Miss Wilson demonstrated proper mathematical skepticism. Emma blinked in surprise but said nothing more. Beside her, Olivia shot her a look that communicated volumes. They both recognized the deflection, the refusal to acknowledge a simple human error, but they also understood something else. Confronting Dr. Hayes directly would only create bigger problems. Their father had taught them to pick their battles wisely. Now then, Dr. Hayes continued, let's move on to more complex patterns. Miss Olivia Wilson, perhaps you'd like to tackle this next sequence. As she wrote a new, deliberately challenging progression on the board, Dr. Hayes felt a disturbing realization settling in her mind. The Wilson twins weren't just memorizing solutions, they were thinking, analyzing, questioning, and that made them far more dangerous to her assumptions than she had anticipated. Tomorrow, she decided, watching Olivia confidently approach the board, she would need to escalate her methods. Because if these scholarship students continued demonstrating this level of mathematical maturity, they might force her to confront some uncomfortable truths about her own teaching philosophy. The battle lines were being drawn, and Dr. Hayes refused to surrender the territory she had claimed as her own. The next morning arrived with the crisp bite of October air, and Dr. Hayes entered her classroom carrying a manila folder that hadn't been there the day before. Her sleep had been restless, filled with calculations and wounded pride. If the Wilson twins wanted to play mathematical games, she would give them a real challenge. Class, before we begin today's lesson, I have a special assessment for our newer students, she announced, her voice carrying a dangerous sweetness that made several students exchange worried glances. She approached Emma's desk and placed a sheet of paper face down in front of her. This problem comes from our 5th grade advanced placement curriculum. I'm curious to see how you handle material designed for students 3 years older. Emma felt her stomach flutter but kept her expression calm. She flipped the paper over to reveal a complex word problem involving multiple variables and algebraic thinking, well beyond typical 2nd grade level. The problem read, a farmer has chickens and cows. Together they have 84 legs and 30 heads. How many chickens and how many cows does the farmer have? Emma stared at the problem, her mind working through the logic. She had never seen anything quite like this, but something her mother had once said echoed in her memory. Every problem is just a story waiting to be solved. She began writing, her small hand moving deliberately across the paper. Chickens have 2 legs, cows have 4 legs, she murmured to herself. If all 30 animals were chickens, that would be 60 legs. But we have 84 legs, so 24 extra legs. Each cow adds 2 extra legs, so 24 2 hours 12 cows. That means 30, 12 hours 18 chickens. She checked her work. 18 chickens x 2 legs are 36 legs. 12 cows x 4 legs thugger 48 legs. 36 plus 48 are 84 legs total, and 18 plus 12 thugger 30 heads total. The classroom had grown quiet as students watched Emma work through the problem methodically, explaining each step aloud. Her approach was logical, clear, and completely accessible to her classmates. Finished, Emma announced, sliding the paper toward Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes glanced at the solution, her expression unreadable. Correct, of course, but she wasn't finished yet. Very good, Miss Wilson. Now, Miss Olivia Wilson, let's see how you handle this one. She placed an even more complex problem in front of Olivia, a geometric puzzle involving area and perimeter calculations that would challenge most middle school students. Olivia studied the problem silently, then began sketching diagrams in the margins. Where Emma had used pure logic, Olivia approached the challenge visually, drawing rectangles and calculating spaces. Her method was completely different, but equally elegant. Dr. Matthew Collins, passing by the classroom on his way to the science lab, paused at the door. He had heard whispers in the faculty lounge about the Wilson twins, and curiosity drew him closer to the window. What he witnessed made him stop completely. 2 7-year-olds working through problems that would challenge his own middle school science students, demonstrating not just intelligence but completely different problem-solving approaches that complemented each other perfectly. Remarkable, he whispered, pulling out his phone to check the time. His first class could wait a few minutes. Dr. Hayes noticed his presence immediately, and her jaw tightened with irritation. The last thing she needed was another teacher witnessing what she was beginning to realize might be a serious miscalculation on her part. As Olivia finished her geometric solution with a flourish, presenting visual proof that was both correct and beautifully organized, Dr. Hayes felt the ground shifting beneath her carefully constructed assumptions. "Well," she said finally, her voice strained, "tomorrow we'll see if this performance holds up with more advanced concepts. Much more advanced." Dr. Collins lingered a moment longer, then continued down the hallway, his mind racing with possibilities. Something extraordinary was happening in Dr. Hayes' classroom, and he intended to learn more. The twins had passed their first real test, but both Emma and Olivia sensed that Dr. Hayes was just getting started. The week that followed became a mathematical battlefield disguised as education. Each morning, Dr. Hayes arrived with increasingly complex challenges tucked in her briefcase like weapons of intellectual warfare. Wednesday brought probability puzzles designed for sixth graders. Thursday featured geometric proofs that challenged spatial reasoning. By Friday, she was presenting algebraic equations that belonged in high school curricula. Yet with each escalation, the Wilson twins responded with growing confidence. Emma attacked problems with logical precision, breaking complex challenges into manageable steps. Olivia approached the same challenges through visual intuition, sketching diagrams and seeing patterns that others missed entirely. Their complementary abilities created something Dr. Hayes hadn't anticipated. They were actually helping their classmates understand difficult concepts. When Tommy Martinez struggled with probability, Emma explained it using coin flips and dice rolls. When Sarah Chen couldn't visualize geometric relationships, Olivia drew diagrams that made abstract concepts tangible. Dr. Collins found himself stopping by more frequently, initially claiming he needed to borrow chalk or check the schedule. But really, he was witnessing something extraordinary: two children whose mathematical gifts were awakening curiosity in an entire classroom. By Thursday, he wasn't alone. "You have to see this," he whispered to Ms. Carmen Garcia during lunch break, pulling the arts teacher toward Dr. Hayes' classroom. Ms. Garcia watched through the door window as Olivia explained how geometric shapes related to artistic compositions, using mathematical concepts to help a struggling student understand both subjects simultaneously. "That child sees mathematics the way artists see color," Ms. Garcia murmured in amazement. "She's visualizing abstract relationships as concrete patterns." "Exactly," Dr. Collins replied. "And her sister thinks like a pure scientist. Hypothesis, test conclusion. Together they're covering every learning style in that room." In the faculty lounge that Friday afternoon, battle lines were quietly drawn. Dr. Hayes sat rigidly at her usual table, Principal Montgomery beside her, both nursing, coffee cups and wounded pride. "These children are disrupting established classroom dynamics," Dr. Hayes said quietly. "Other students are becoming dependent on their explanations instead of developing independent thinking skills." Principal Montgomery nodded grimly. "I've been saying from the beginning, scholarship cases require different handling. They lack the cultural preparation for our academic environment." But across the room, a different conversation was unfolding. Dr. Collins, Ms. Garcia, and now Mrs. Foster from the library clustered around a small table, their voices animated with excitement. "Preparation?" Dr. Collins scoffed, glancing toward the other table. "Those girls are thinking 3 steps ahead of problems we haven't even taught them yet." Ms. Garcia added, "Olivia asked me about the mathematical relationships in Renaissance art compositions. A 7-year-old. She's making connections between disciplines that graduate students struggle with." Mrs. Foster leaned forward conspiratorially. "I found them in the library yesterday reading about number theory for fun. When I asked if they needed help, Emma said they were just curious about patterns." The divide was becoming unmistakable. On one side sat those who viewed the Wilson twins as anomalies to be contained, problems to be solved. On the other sat educators who recognized something rare and precious, minds that could transform how mathematics was taught and learned. Dr. Hayes overheard fragments of the conversation and felt her resolve hardening. Next week, she decided, She would arrange a test that would expose these children's limitations once and for all. No more classroom demonstrations that made her look foolish in front of colleagues. She would contact the regional mathematics board about the upcoming elementary Olympiad. Let the Wilson twins face real mathematical prodigies, children who had been groomed for academic excellence since preschool. Then everyone would see the difference between authentic preparation and lucky guesswork. But across the room, Dr. Collins was making plans of his own, quietly determined to ensure these remarkable children received the support they deserved. Principal Montgomery's phone call came on Monday morning, his tone carrying the weight of administrative authority. "Dr. Hayes, I've arranged a formal assessment for Wednesday afternoon. The school board will be present to evaluate our scholarship program's effectiveness." The words hung between them like a challenge. Dr. Hayes understood perfectly. This was her opportunity to prove that academic excellence couldn't be manufactured overnight, regardless of raw talent. Wednesday afternoon arrived gray and cold, matching the stern faces of the 5 board members who filed into Dr. Hayes's classroom. They arranged themselves along the back wall like judges at a tribunal, their expensive suits and measured expressions speaking of decades in educational leadership. Chairman Roberts, a silver-haired man whose family had endowed 3 buildings at Westbrook, consulted his pocket watch with theatrical precision. "Dr. Hayes, we're here to assess whether our diversity initiative is maintaining academic standards." Dr. Hayes had spent 3 sleepless nights preparing her most challenging problems. Mathematical puzzles that had stumped graduate students, geometric proofs that required advanced spatial reasoning, and algebraic concepts typically reserved for high school curricula. "Emma and Olivia Wilson," she announced formally, "please approach the board." The twins walked forward with quiet dignity, their second-hand uniforms pressed carefully by their father that morning. Emma carried herself with steady confidence while Olivia's artistic eye took in every detail of the imposing audience. "Your first challenge," Dr. Hayes began writing on the board, "involves advanced pattern recognition with multiple variables." The problem was deliberately complex, a sequence involving both arithmetic and geometric progressions that twisted together in ways designed to confuse even exceptional students. Emma studied the numbers silently, then began speaking as she wrote. "The pattern has 2 layers. Every odd position follows arithmetic progression. Every even position follows geometric progression. So we track them separately, then recombine." Her explanation was clear and logical, but what stunned the board was what happened next. Olivia approached the same problem from a completely different angle, drawing visual representations that revealed the underlying structure through geometric relationships. "They see the same truth through different lenses," whispered Dr. Elizabeth Winters, a mathematics professor at the local university who served on the board. One analytical, one intuitive, but both arriving at elegant solutions. Dr. Hayes presented 3 more increasingly difficult challenges. Each time, the twins not only solved the problems but demonstrated approaches that complemented each other perfectly. Emma's systematic methodology combined with Olivia's visual insights created solutions that were both rigorous and beautiful. Chairman Roberts leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "These children show remarkable abilities. What's their educational background?" Dr. Hayes hesitated, realizing her strategy was backfiring spectacularly. Before she could respond, Jack Wilson stepped forward from where he'd been quietly observing near the doorway. "Their mother was Catherine Wilson," he said simply. "She was a mathematics graduate student before." His voice caught slightly. "Before she passed away 5 years ago. She taught them basics when they were very young, but mostly she taught them to love learning." Dr. Winters's eyes widened with recognition. "Catherine Morrison Wilson? I knew Katie in graduate school. She was brilliant. Her thesis on pattern recognition in complex systems was groundbreaking. These children have inherited her mathematical intuition." For the first time since meeting the twins, Dr. Hayes felt her skepticism iver. She remembered Catherine Wilson now, a promising young mathematician whose career had been cut tragically short. Perhaps these children's abilities weren't the result of coaching after all. But Principal Montgomery, sensing his position weakening, stepped forward decisively. While these results are interesting, we need to ensure our students can compete against truly prepared opponents. Perhaps they should face actual mathematical prodigies, children who've been in advanced programs since preschool. Chairman Roberts nodded thoughtfully. The Regional Elementary Mathematics Olympiad is coming up. It would be educational to see how they perform against students from established mathematical academies. Dr. Hayes found herself agreeing, though for different reasons now. Yes, the Olympiad would provide proper perspective. It features the region's most advanced young mathematicians. As the board members filed out discussing scholarship criteria and academic standards, Dr. Winters paused beside the twins. "Your mother would be very proud," she said softly. "The Olympiad will be challenging, but you have something special. The kind of mathematical thinking that can't be taught, only nurtured." The die was cast. In 4 weeks, the Wilson twins would face their greatest test yet. The announcement arrived the following Monday in Dr. Hayes's mailbox like a perfectly timed gift from the academic gods. The Regional Elementary Mathematics Olympiad, the most prestigious mathematical competition for students under 12, would be held in exactly 4 weeks at the legendary Bradford Academy. Dr. Hayes read the competition guidelines with growing satisfaction. Bradford Academy's Gothic towers and century-old reputation for mathematical excellence would provide the perfect backdrop for exposing the Wilson twins' limitations. This wasn't some small-town assessment. This was where true mathematical prodigies proved their worth. She entered her classroom that morning with renewed confidence, the Olympiad announcement clasped in her manicured hands like a secret weapon. "Class, I have exciting news," she announced, her voice carrying subtle undertones of anticipated vindication. "Westbrook Academy has been invited to send representatives to the Regional Elementary Mathematics Olympiad." The students stirred with interest. Many had heard older siblings discuss the legendary competition, a mathematical battlefield where 7-year-olds solved problems that challenged high school students. This competition, Dr. Hayes continued, deliberately making eye contact with the Wilson twins, features students who've been in accelerated mathematical programs since preschool, children whose families have invested tens of thousands of dollars in private tutoring and specialized preparation. Emma and Olivia exchanged glances, understanding the implicit message in their teacher's words. "Of course," Dr. Hayes added with calculated sweetness, "participation requires enormous preparation and mathematical sophistication. 7-year-olds rarely qualify for the final rounds, much less compete successfully against older, more experienced students." Principal Montgomery, who had mysteriously appeared in the doorway, stepped forward with his practiced administrative smile. "It would be educational for our scholarship students to witness the level they're aspiring to reach. Sometimes, seeing excellence firsthand provides valuable perspective on genuine preparation versus—" He paused meaningfully. "Natural enthusiasm." Dr. Hayes nodded gravely. "Indeed. The competition spans 6 hours across multiple elimination rounds. Only students with extensive competitive experience typically survive past the preliminary stages." What the twins didn't know, what no one in the classroom realized, was that Dr. Hayes had been secretly coaching Trent Phillips, son of board member Rebecca Phillips, for the past 18 months. Trent represented everything she believed constituted true mathematical preparation: private tutoring since age 4, summers at academic camps, and a family devoted to educational excellence. In her mind, Trent was Westbrook's genuine mathematical hope, a student who embodied the institution's academic values and social standing. The Wilson twins would serve as perfect contrast, highlighting the difference between authentic preparation and momentary classroom success. "Miss Emma Wilson, Miss Olivia Wilson," Dr. Hayes announced formally, "would you like to represent Westbrook Academy at the Regional Mathematics Olympiad?" The challenge hung in the air like thrown gauntlet. Around the classroom, students held their breath, sensing the weight of the moment. Emma felt her heart racing, but her voice remained steady. "Yes, Dr. Hayes. We'd be honored to represent Westbrook." Olivia nodded beside her sister, though her hands trembled slightly with nervous excitement. "Excellent." Dr. Hayes smiled, though her eyes remained cold. We'll begin preparation immediately. Of course, the competition will feature students from mathematical powerhouses like Princeton Preparatory, Bradford Academy's own advanced program, and the Mathematical Institute of Excellence. Students who've been trained specifically for this level of competition since they could hold pencils. As the dismissal bell rang and students filed out, Dr. Hayes remained at her desk, already planning the tutorials that would expose every gap in the twins' preparation. Let them face children who'd been groomed for mathematical warfare since preschool. The regional Olympiad would provide the definitive proof that talent without proper breeding and preparation could only go so far. But what Dr. Hayes didn't anticipate was that some gifts couldn't be bought, coached, or manufactured, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponents were those with nothing left to lose. The Wilson apartment transformed overnight into an unlikely mathematical command center. Jack Wilson had pushed their small dining table against the living room wall, creating space for the twins to spread out notebooks, borrowed textbooks, and sheets of practice problems that seemed to multiply like rabbits. 3 weeks remained, until the Olympiad, and the weight of preparation pressed against them like summer humidity. Jack had adjusted his custodial schedule at General Hospital, taking earlier shifts so he could be home during the twins' evening study sessions. "Dad, what's a combinatorial proof?" Emma asked, staring at a practice problem that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. Jack Wilson, whose formal education had ended with high school, studied the page with the same intensity he brought to understanding new hospital equipment. "I'm not sure, sweetheart, but let's figure it out together." What Jack lacked in mathematical training, he compensated for with something more valuable: unshakable faith in his daughter's abilities and the patience to sit with them through hours of frustrating trial and error. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Collins had noticed the twins staying after school, struggling with advanced concepts in the empty library. Their determination moved him to action, though he had to be careful. Dr. Hayes had made clear that the twins were her responsibility. "I happen to have some old Olympiad materials," he mentioned casually one afternoon, slipping a manila envelope into Emma's backpack. "Someone left these in the science lab years ago. Might be interesting reading." Inside were treasures beyond price. 5 years of past Olympiad problems, complete with solution explanations and strategic approaches. The twins devoured every page, like starving scholars. But progress came with painful moments. 2 weeks into preparation, Olivia encountered a series of advanced combinatorial problems that shattered her confidence. She sat at their makeshift study center, tears streaming down her cheeks as numbers swam meaninglessly across the page. "I can't do this, Emma," she whispered. "These kids have been preparing their whole lives. We're going to embarrass ourselves." Emma felt her own doubts rising like floodwater, but before she could respond, their father appeared with a dusty cardboard box she'd never seen before. "I think it's time you girls saw something," Jack said quietly, settling beside them on the worn carpet. He opened the box carefully, revealing notebooks filled with their mother's handwriting, mathematical equations, theoretical proofs, and margin notes revealing a brilliant mind grappling with complex concepts. "Your mother faced the same doubts when she started graduate school," Jack explained, opening to a page where Catherine had written, "I feel like giving up," in bold letters, followed by pages of determined work. She wasn't naturally gifted at everything. She had to fight for every breakthrough. The twins studied their mother's journals with reverence, seeing not just mathematical solutions but evidence of struggle, persistence, and eventual triumph. Catherine Wilson had written notes like, "Try again tomorrow," and "Remember, mathematics rewards patience, not speed." That night, something shifted in their approach. Instead of competing against each other's weaknesses, they began combining their different strengths systematically. Emma would tackle problems analytically while Olivia approached them visually. Then they'd compare methods until they found solutions neither could have reached alone. They created songs to memorize formulas, used household items to model geometric concepts, and developed visualization techniques that turned abstract numbers into concrete stories. Their methods were unconventional, but they were learning to think mathematically rather than just solve problems. Ms. Garcia, who had been quietly observing their progress, began incorporating mathematical concepts into art projects, helping Olivia see geometric relationships through creative expression. "You're not just preparing for a competition," Jack told them during their final week of preparation. "You're honoring your mother's legacy by refusing to give up when things get difficult." As the Olympiad approached, the twins felt ready, not because they knew everything, but because they had learned to think together in ways that turned their individual gifts into something greater. With 1 week remaining before the Olympiad, the Wilson twins faced their most daunting challenge yet, a practice test Dr. Hayes had generously provided, featuring problems from previous competitions that had stumped even veteran participants. Emma stared at problem number 7, a complex geometric proof involving overlapping circles and tangent lines. The elegant diagram mocked her with its seeming simplicity, hiding layers of mathematical relationships she couldn't quite grasp. "I think I'm seeing patterns that aren't there," she admitted to Olivia, rubbing her tired eyes. They had been studying for 4 hours straight, and the letters were beginning to blur together. Olivia looked up from her own struggle, a probability problem involving colored marbles that seemed to multiply every time she recalculated. "Maybe we're overthinking this. Remember what Mom wrote in her journal about stepping back when problems feel impossible?" Emma nodded, recalling their mother's note. "Sometimes the solution appears when you stop searching so desperately for it." They decided to approach the problems differently. Instead of working alone, they sat side by side, talking through each challenge aloud. Emma described her logical process while Olivia sketched visual representations of the same concepts. "Wait," Olivia said suddenly, her pencil tracing circles on scratch paper. "What if the geometric proof isn't about calculating angles at all? What if it's about seeing the symmetry?" Emma studied her sister's drawing, then felt understanding dawn like sunrise. "And my probability problem. I've been treating each marble, draws independent, but they're connected events that affect each other. Their breakthrough came not from memorizing formulas or drilling techniques, but from learning to think together in ways that leveraged both analytical precision and intuitive insight." Jack Wilson watched from the kitchen doorway as his daughters worked late into the evening, their voices animated with excitement as mathematical concepts finally clicked into place. For the first time since Catherine's death, he felt her presence strongly, not in sadness, but in the determination and intellectual curiosity that lived on in their children. "You know," he said, bringing them cups of hot chocolate, "your mother used to say that mathematics was like a conversation between the mind and the universe. I think you two are finally learning to speak the language." That night, as the twins reviewed their completed practice test, problems that had seemed impossible just hours earlier now solved with elegant clarity. They felt something shift inside them. They weren't just preparing for competition anymore. They were discovering capabilities they hadn't known they possessed. The Olympiad suddenly seemed less like a trial and more like an opportunity to show the world what the Wilson twins could accomplish when they worked together. Outside their apartment window, snow began falling softly, covering the city in pristine white. Tomorrow would bring their final day of preparation, and then they would face the mathematical challenge of their young lives. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, they felt ready. Saturday morning arrived with sharp November air that cut through coats and confidence alike. The Wilson twins sat in the back of Jack's aging Honda Civic, watching Bradford Academy's Gothic spires grow larger through the frost-covered windshield. Bradford Academy commanded its hilltop location like a medieval fortress of learning. Stone gargoyles perched on corners of buildings that had housed mathematical prodigies for over a century. The very architecture seemed to whisper of intellectual superiority and generational privilege. "Remember," Jack said softly as they pulled into the circular drive, "you earned your place here." Emma and Olivia nodded, adjusting their pressed Westbrook uniforms. Around them, luxury vehicles disgorged competitors and their families, children in designer clothes clutching advanced calculators, parents discussing private tutors and summer enrichment programs. Inside the main auditorium, 200 students, aged 7 to 11, filled rows of wooden seats. The Wilson twins found themselves conspicuously among the youngest competitors, their small frames dwarfed by 4th and 5th graders who carried themselves with the confidence of academic veterans. Dr. Hayes swept into the registration area like a general inspecting troops. She immediately located Trent Phillips, whose mother had driven him in their Mercedes SUV, and began introducing him to competition judges with obvious pride. "This is Trent Phillips from Westbrook Academy," she announced to Dr. Margaret Steinberg, head judge from MIT. "He's been in our accelerated program since kindergarten, exceptional mathematical reasoning." Meanwhile, the Wilson twins stood quietly near the registration table, barely earning a nod of acknowledgement from their own teacher. Jack Wilson found himself alone in the parents' section, surrounded by couples in cashmere coats discussing their children's acceptance letters to prestigious prep schools. Conversations floated around him about SAT prep for 10-year-olds and summer programs at Ivy League universities. "Our Jennifer has been working with a Harvard mathematics graduate," a woman in pearls mentioned to her companion. "We started advanced preparation when she was 4. Jack clutched his hospital identification badge, still clipped to his shirt from the night shift, and tried to look invisible while supporting his daughters from afar. At precisely 9 a.m., Dr. Steinberg approached the podium. "Welcome to the Regional Elementary Mathematics Olympiad. This competition consists of 5 elimination rounds over 6 hours. Each round becomes progressively more challenging, and only the highest scorers advance." The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as proctors distributed the first test booklets. Emma and Olivia exchanged a look across the aisle where they sat. Their secret signal developed during weeks of preparation. Emma reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand 3 times. Olivia responded with 3 gentle squeezes back. It was their private code, developed years ago. "We're stronger together." "You have 45 minutes for round 1, Dr. Steinberg announced. "You may begin. Now." The rustling of 200 test booklets opening filled the auditorium like paper thunder. Emma and Olivia looked down at their first challenges, took identical deep breaths, and began the mathematical battle that would change their lives forever. In the parents' section, Jack Wilson clasped his hands tightly and whispered a prayer to Catherine's memory, hoping their daughters were ready for whatever lay ahead. The first elimination round fell like dominoes before the Wilson twins' coordinated approach. Problems that had intimidated them during preparation now seemed manageable. Each challenge met with the methodical precision they had developed through weeks of shared struggle. By 11:30 a.m., the first cut had been announced. Of 200 original competitors, only 80 remained. Both Emma and Olivia's names appeared on the advancement list, along with Trent Phillips and students from mathematical powerhouse schools across the region. During the 15-minute break, Dr. Hayes found herself in an uncomfortable position. She had expected to comfort her scholarship students after their inevitable elimination, not congratulate them on advancing past carefully groomed competitors. "Well done on round 1, she said stiffly to the twins, her voice lacking its usual authority. "Round 2 will be significantly more challenging." Emma and Olivia simply nodded respectfully, but their confidence was quietly growing with each successful challenge. The lunch break arrived after round 3, with only 24 competitors remaining. The Wilson twins sat with their father at a small table in the corner, sharing sandwiches he had packed that morning while other families discussed their children's performances with expensive consultants. "How are you feeling?" Jack asked, studying his daughters' faces for signs of fatigue or discouragement. "Different than I expected," Emma admitted. "The problems are hard, but they're not impossible. They're just bigger versions of things we already understand." Olivia nodded, sketching geometric patterns on her napkin. "It's like Mom's journal said. Once you see the underlying patterns, the complexity doesn't matter as much." Across the dining hall, Dr. Hayes sat with Trent Phillips and his mother, providing intensive coaching between rounds. But her eyes kept drifting toward the corner table where the Wilson twins sat calmly with their custodial worker father, displaying none of the anxiety she had expected to see. When round 4 results were announced, only 12 competitors remained. The twins had not only survived but excelled, their scores placing them in the top tier alongside students from Princeton Preparatory and Bradford Academy's own elite program. Trent Phillips had also advanced, but his confidence was visibly shaken. The problems were becoming more creative, requiring intuitive leaps that his carefully drilled methodology couldn't always provide. Dr. Hayes watched her prized student struggle with mounting concern. Everything she had believed about mathematical preparation, about the superiority of structured, expensive education, was being challenged by two 7-year-olds who had learned mathematics in a cramped apartment with their widowed father. "The semifinal round will determine our final 5 competitors," Dr. Steinberg announced. "These problems require not just computational skill, but creative mathematical thinking at the highest level." As the remaining competitors prepared for what many considered the most challenging round, Emma and Olivia exchanged their secret hand squeeze once more. They had come further than anyone expected, including themselves. But the real test, the problems that would separate true mathematical gifts from careful preparation, still lay ahead. In the parents section, Jack Wilson sat alone but proud, watching his daughters face challenges that would have intimidated graduate students. Catherine's legacy lived on in their quiet determination and unshakable partnership. The final battle was about to begin. The auditorium had emptied dramatically, leaving only 5 small figures seated at widely spaced desks on the massive stage. 200 competitors had been reduced to this elite group: Emma and Olivia Wilson, Trent Phillips from Westbrook Academy, Jennifer Morrison from Princeton Preparatory, and David Chen from Bradford Academy's honors program. The silence was profound as Dr. Steinberg approached the podium carrying a single sheet of paper. "Congratulations to our 5 finalists. You have demonstrated exceptional mathematical abilities to reach this point." Jack Wilson leaned forward in his seat, one of only a dozen parents remaining in the vast auditorium. His daughters looked impossibly small on that enormous stage, but their posture radiated quiet determination. "Your final challenge," Dr. Steinberg announced, "is a complex pattern recognition problem that requires both analytical precision and creative mathematical thinking. You have 90 minutes. She began writing on the large board visible throughout the auditorium. "A sequence begins with specific rules that change as the sequence progresses. The first 12 terms are 1, 4, 9, 16, 7, 12, 19, 28, 15, 24, 35, 48. Determine the pattern governing this sequence and find the next 4 terms." The audience of parents, teachers, and judges fell silent as the finalists began working. This wasn't merely a difficult problem. It was a test of mathematical maturity that would challenge university students. Trent Phillips immediately began applying the systematic approaches Dr. Hayes had drilled into him. He searched for arithmetic, progressions, geometric relationships, and standard mathematical sequences. His work was methodical but increasingly frustrated as conventional patterns failed to emerge. Jennifer Morrison from Princeton Preparatory attacked the problem with advanced algebraic techniques, her expensive preparation evident in her sophisticated approach. But even her extensive training couldn't reveal the underlying logic. David Chen, representing Bradford Academy's finest, employed computational methods and statistical analysis, filling page after page with calculations that led nowhere. But at their separate desks, Emma and Olivia Wilson exchanged a brief look, not communication, which was forbidden, but recognition. They had seen something in those numbers that the others had missed. Emma began with pure analysis, examining the relationships between consecutive terms. Meanwhile, Olivia approached the sequence visually, sketching patterns and looking for geometric relationships between the numbers. The auditorium clock ticked loudly as 30 minutes passed, then 45. Other finalists showed increasing signs of stress, erasing work and starting over repeatedly. But the Wilson twins were entering the zone they had discovered during their most intense preparation sessions, that state where their different approaches to mathematical thinking merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. Dr. Hayes watched from the judges' table with growing unease. Her carefully coached student was struggling visibly, while the scholarship twins worked with calm focus that suggested they had found something the others had missed. With 40 minutes remaining, Both Emma and Olivia suddenly straightened in their chairs. They had found it, the hidden pattern that connected seemingly random numbers into elegant mathematical logic. The question now was whether they could complete their solutions before time expired. With 35 minutes remaining, Emma and Olivia had cracked the code that confounded their competitors. The sequence wasn't following a single pattern. It was actually two interwoven sequences that alternated according to a hidden geometric progression. Emma's analytical mind had identified the alternating structure. Positions 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 followed one rule, while positions 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 followed another. But it was Olivia's visual approach that revealed the beautiful truth. The two sequences were related through geometric relationships that created an elegant mathematical spiral when graphed. Perfect squares modified by their position, Emma whispered to herself, writing rapidly. But the modification follows a geometric pattern that Olivia mapped visually. While other finalists continued searching for conventional patterns, the Wilson twins were documenting a solution that bridged numerical analysis and geometric intuition in ways that impressed even themselves. They finished with 20 minutes to spare, their answer sheets containing not just the correct next four terms, 39, 52, 63, 80, but a complete explanation of their methodology that included both mathematical proof and visual demonstration. Dr. Steinberg noticed their early completion with surprise. Most finalists used every available minute, often running out of time before reaching complete solutions. She approached their desks to collect their papers, glancing briefly at their work. Her expression shifted from professional curiosity to genuine amazement. "Dr. Martinez," she called quietly to her fellow judge, "you need to see this." Dr. Elena Martinez from Stanford hurried over, followed by Dr. Winters from the university. The three judges huddled around the twins' solutions, their whispers growing, more animated with each line they read. "This approach," Dr. Steinberg murmured, "I've never seen anything like it. They've identified a dual pattern structure that creates geometric relationships between seemingly unrelated terms. It's not just correct," Dr. Martinez added, her voice filled with academic excitement. "It's elegant. They've found connections that reveal the problem's underlying mathematical beauty." With 5 minutes remaining, time was called. Other finalists looked exhausted, their papers showing multiple attempts and erased work. Several had found partial patterns, but none had achieved complete solutions. Dr. Steinberg returned to the podium, holding the twins' papers like precious artifacts. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have the results of this year's Regional Elementary Mathematics Olympiad." The auditorium fell silent as she prepared to announce the rankings. Jack Wilson gripped his chair arms, his heart pounding with anticipation and pride. This year's competition featured an unprecedented solution to our final challenge. The winning approach demonstrated mathematical thinking that transcends conventional problem-solving methodologies. She paused, consulting her notes. First place with a perfect score and an innovative solution technique, Emma and Olivia Wilson from Westbrook Academy. The auditorium erupted in applause as the twins stood at their desks, looking stunned by their own success. Dr. Hayes sat, frozen at the judges' table, her worldview crumbling around her like ancient foundations. As the applause thundered through Bradford Academy's auditorium, Emma and Olivia Wilson walked forward to accept their trophy with the same quiet dignity they had carried throughout the competition. The crystal mathematical symbol seemed to catch every light in the room, reflecting their achievement in brilliant fragments. Dr. Steinberg presented them with educational grants worth $15,000 each, money that would transform their academic futures. "Your solution will be published in the Journal of Elementary Mathematical Excellence," she announced. "It represents a new approach to pattern recognition that could influence how we teach mathematical thinking." Behind them on the stage, their fellow competitors offered congratulations with varying degrees of genuine enthusiasm. Jennifer Morrison from Princeton Preparatory shook their hands professionally, while David Chen from Bradford Academy seemed genuinely impressed by their methodology. But it was Trent Phillips who surprised everyone. Despite finishing third and Facing his mentor's visible disappointment, he approached the twins with authentic admiration. "That was incredible," he said quietly. "I've been studying these problems for 2 years, and I never would have seen what you found." His words carried more weight than any judge's praise, coming from a competitor who understood the true difficulty of what they had accomplished. Dr. Hayes remained seated at the judge's table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. 23. Years of teaching mathematics at Westbrook Academy, and she had never witnessed anything like what these children had achieved. Her assumptions about academic preparation, social background, and mathematical ability lay in ruins around her. The media attention began immediately. A reporter from the regional education newsletter discovered the twins' remarkable background. Their mother's truncated mathematical career, their father's support despite his own educational limitations, and their journey from scholarship recipients to Olympiad champions. "These children represent something extraordinary," Dr. Winters told the gathering crowd. "Pure mathematical thinking, unencumbered by conventional approaches. MIT's Saturday Enrichment program would be honored to have them." Jack Wilson stood among the other parents, tears streaming down his face as reporters asked about Catherine's influence on the twins' development. "She always said mathematics was about seeing patterns in the universe," he managed to say. "I think she would be proud they remembered that lesson." Dr. Collins, who had driven separately to witness the competition, found Jack in the crowd. "Those materials I shared really helped," he said with satisfaction. "But what they accomplished today, that came from something no textbook could teach." The drive back to Westbrook Academy passed in surreal quiet. The twins sat in the back seat, their trophy between them, still processing what had happened. They had entered the competition hoping simply to avoid embarrassment. They were returning as champions who had redefined mathematical problem-solving for their age group. Monday morning at Westbrook Academy brought a transformation no one could have anticipated. Principal Montgomery, who had questioned their admission just months earlier, called a special assembly to honor their achievement. "It is my great pleasure," he announced to the packed auditorium, "to recognize Emma and Olivia Wilson, whose extraordinary performance at the Regional Mathematics Olympiad brings honor to our entire academic community." The applause was thunderous, but Emma and Olivia noticed something different in their classmates' faces: respect rather than curiosity, admiration rather than skepticism. They were no longer the scholarship kids who didn't quite belong. They had proven themselves through the one currency Westbrook Academy respected above all others: academic excellence. As they returned to their classroom that morning, Dr. Hayes stood waiting at the doorway, her expression unreadable but her posture less rigid than they remembered. 3 months had passed since the Olympiad victory, and spring sunlight streamed through Dr. Hayes' classroom windows, illuminating a scene that would have been unimaginable just 1 year earlier. Students worked in pairs at their desks, their diverse backgrounds creating a tapestry of learning styles and perspectives that enriched every lesson. The transformation had begun slowly, almost imperceptibly. Dr. Hayes found herself questioning teaching methods she had employed for decades, wondering how many brilliant minds she might have overlooked because they didn't fit her narrow definition of mathematical potential. The breaking point came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in February. She had watched Emma explain geometric relationships to struggling classmate Marcus Rivera, using visualization techniques that made abstract concepts tangible. The patient kindness, in the 7-year-old's voice, the way she built up rather than talked down to her classmate, forced Dr. Hayes to confront an uncomfortable truth about her own methods. That evening, she found herself reading Catherine Wilson's published research for the first time, downloaded from the university library database. The mathematical insights were brilliant, but what struck her most were the marginalia, notes about making mathematics accessible, about finding beauty in unexpected places, about nurturing curiosity rather than demanding conformity. The next morning, Dr. Hayes made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Emma, Olivia," she called softly as students filed out after class. "Could you remain behind for a moment?" The twins exchanged glances, wondering if they had somehow transgressed against classroom protocol. But when they approached her desk, Dr. Hayes's expression held none of its familiar sternness. "I owe you an apology," she began, her voice quieter than they had ever heard it. "And more than that, I owe you gratitude." Emma and Olivia waited silently, unsure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability from their formidable teacher. "I've been teaching mathematics for 23 years, Dr. Hayes continued, but I've been measuring intelligence by a very narrow ruler. You've taught me to see mathematical thinking in ways I never imagined possible." She paused, gathering courage for words that didn't come easily. "Your mother's research, I read it. She understood something I'm only beginning to grasp, that mathematical gift comes in many forms, and our job as educators is to nurture that gift, not reshape it to fit our preconceptions." From that day forward, Dr. Hayes began implementing collaborative learning approaches that paired students of different backgrounds and thinking styles. She incorporated visual techniques Olivia had pioneered, analytical methods Emma had perfected, and creative problem-solving strategies that honored diverse perspectives. The classroom became a laboratory for mathematical discovery rather than a testing ground for conformity. The most profound change came when Principal Montgomery announced the establishment of the Catherine Wilson Mathematics Scholarship, a program designed to identify and nurture mathematical talent in students from all backgrounds. The scholarship would provide not just financial support, but mentoring and enrichment opportunities that recognize different forms of intellectual gift. Dr. Hayes had been the one to propose the program, working with the school board to design criteria that valued creative thinking alongside traditional metrics. Her presentation to the board included examples of innovative problem-solving techniques the Wilson twins had brought to her classroom, demonstrating how diversity of thought strengthened mathematical education for all students. On the warm May afternoon when the scholarship program was officially dedicated, Emma and Olivia stood with their father in Westbrook Academy's main hall, watching as a bronze plaque bearing their mother's name was unveiled. "Catherine Morrison Wilson Memorial Mathematics Scholarship," Jack read aloud, his voice thick with emotion. "Established to nurture mathematical talent in students who see patterns where others see complexity, who find beauty in numbers, and who believe that every problem has a solution waiting to be discovered." Dr. Winters from the university spoke at the ceremony, describing Catherine's research and its influence on mathematical education. She believed that mathematics was a language for understanding the universe's hidden patterns. Her daughters have proven that this language speaks through many different voices. As the ceremony concluded and families gathered for refreshments, Emma and Olivia noticed something that filled them with quiet pride. Among the scholarship recipients announced that day were 3 students whose backgrounds mirrored their own. Children with extraordinary gifts and limited resources, now given opportunities they might never have received. Walking across Westbrook's manicured grounds toward their father's car, the twins reflected on their remarkable year. They remained fundamentally unchanged, still completing each other's mathematical thoughts, still carrying their mother's photograph in Emma's notebook, still finding wonder in numerical patterns that others overlooked. But they now walked these hallways with quiet confidence born not from privilege or preparation, but from having proved that talent, determination, and mutual support could overcome any obstacle. "You know what Mom would say about all this?" Emma asked her sister as they reached the parking lot. Olivia smiled, hearing Catherine's voice in her memory. "Mathematics is just another way of seeing the beauty that's always been there." They had found their place at Westbrook Academy not by changing who they were, but by showing others that excellence comes in many forms, and that sometimes the most extraordinary gifts appear in the most unexpected packages. As Jack drove them home through the suburban streets they had once viewed with intimidation, the Wilson twins knew they had honored their mother's legacy in the most meaningful way possible, by opening doors not just for themselves, but for all the brilliant minds that would follow.